Welcome to How Preschool Teachers Do It.
This is Alison Kentos. I am an early childhood educator.
And this is Cindy Tarabush. I am an early childhood consultant.
This podcast is for parents and early childhood professionals.
Let our experience and research-based knowledge become your guide. It's Monday, preschool peeps.
Hi, peeps.
Hey, peeps. So today we're going to dip our toe just a tiny little bit into things like a fairy tale debate.
Yes.
Which, if you don't know about fairy tale debates, we're really just dipping our little toe into it.
Yeah.
A tiny little toe.
So big.
There's a lot of controversy around fairy tales and whether they should be read to children or if they're too violent or graphic. And there are even things having to do with preschools and early childhood settings of any kind, really, family, childcare, whatever. Yeah. There are environmental rating scales, not whatever. Family childcare is huge.
Yeah,
but there are thing. Right? I don't know why I said whatever. Part of our speech thing. There are rating scales that tell us what sorts of books that we should and shouldn't have in our early childhood environments, and they don't like fairy tales in those very well-known and often used ways to rate early childhood settings. Yeah. But we're not going to get specifically into that in this episode. Instead, we're going to talk about the message that children get from fairy tales and other sources. So it isn't just fairy tales.
It's not just fairy tales. We're talking a whole bunch of other stuff too that children see on a daily basis.
Right. So it isn't just fairy tales, folks. Don't think I'm picking on that, but they do get very similar messages from a variety of different types of sources that Alison and I contend set them up for some disappointment about life.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yes.
When you think about the typical fairy tale ending of happily ever after and what that looks like.
Well, because it usually looks the same in every fairy tale, right? There's some sort of problem is solved. Prince wins his princess, they ride off into the sunset, and they lived happily ever after. Does that sound like every single fairy tale? Pretty much, yeah. Right?
They ride off, they live happily ever after. They never argue over who's going to take the dishes out of the dishwasher. No. They never bicker about each other's driving the horse. They just live happily ever after. Are sunshine and roses after they find each other.
They also make it seem like it's so easy to find each other when it's not easy to find someone who loves you and you love them. Okay. It's difficult. I'm just saying. Living in it.
Does the phrase, if the shoe fits, wear it, come from a fairy tale? You know how you had to find the shoe that fits Cinderella?
The Cinderella shoe. Yes.
Yeah. Right. If the shoe fits, wear it. I don't know if it comes from there. But lots of people wear a size 8, folks. It's not that easy.
It's not that easy.
So it's not that easy to develop a good relationship. All relationships have ups and downs.
Well, it also makes it seem like if you do not have a relationship that you are in, that you have somehow failed life.
I think that comes from multiple places, though. I don't think that just comes from people who read fairy tales to you as a kid. I think it also comes from things like television, movies, and your family's expectations and what you learned as a child from family members about what is good and right and quote unquote normal. There is no normal. And I'm always saying that.
I'm here to tell you that according to my family, my life is not normal simply because I am not married yet. Okay.
Well,
but
I think
are their expectations based on these things, fairy tales, TV, like fitting into that norm?
Well, it is about fitting into a norm. But does that norm exist? Does the norm exist?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it does. Like why do you want everybody to just lead the exact same life, like, and conform into this norm that doesn't really exist. Like, why?
Because that's what life was for so many generations.
For so many years, sure.
It was you grow up, you get married, you make it work, which was the version of happily ever after for a lot of generations and people.
Yeah.
Right?
Make it work. Yeah. Make it work.
And then people realized at some point, like when I was a kid, you don't have to make it work. You can decide this relationship isn't working and you can part ways.
Yes.
And I think that sometimes people are hesitant to do that for a variety of reasons.
Oh, yeah.
But, our children, if we go back, our children being given an unrealistic expectation about life. So think about TV shows.
Yes, the TV show.
Their TV shows are how long, Alison?
30 minutes long.
And what happens?
In 30 minutes, same thing. There's a problem. They discuss the problem. Problem is solved. Boom, we move on with life.
We're all happy and love each other now.
And in 30 minutes, okay? And this has been going on for a while. I mean, I look back to my childhood and you think of those family sitcoms where everything's solved so quickly and with a laugh, okay? And that's not life. Life is hard. And some of those problems that they're discussing in 30 minutes are problems that would take sometimes years to solve. Or you also have like where it makes it seem like it's supposed to be so easy to talk about these problems. And some of those problems are very, very difficult to share even with your own family, right? And they make it seem like, oh, look, it's funny, and it's easy and I can do it. And it's not. Also,
some of life's problems go unsolved. I've read articles about when TV shows, let's say a TV show, an adult's show, proposes a problem between characters on it and they never resolve it, people freak out. People want the resolution to the problem.
Because that's what they're used to with their shows. The shows always have a resolution.
I think we wish we had a resolution to every problem in our lives and we don't.
Right.
So when I'm watching TV, which is like supposed to be escapism, then if I'm watching this escapism, I want their problem solved because I can't solve all my problems. The thing is that children watch this and think, that's life. In 30 minutes, we could sit down like a sitcom family, work this out and things will be solved.
Yeah.
The young children, if we're talking about children under about the age of 8 or so, remember, they can't separate fantasy and reality in their own actions, in the actions they see from other entities, like a TV show. So or a movie even, they struggle with the boundary between fantasy and reality. If they're struggling with that boundary, then I do think that they internalize a message about how life is supposed to roll out. How is my life supposed to roll out? I think it would be super awesome to have a TV show where sometimes things are a little sticky in a child's way, not for like in an adult program. Yeah, that would be, I think some of the best shows we've ever had on television are where things are kind of sticky for a long time in the plot.
Yes.
Right.
That's the good ones.
Those are the good shows.
Those are the good shows. Yeah.
For children's shows, I would love for there, and maybe there is one that our preschool peeps know, but I would love there to be a discussion about what happens when problems linger or when people are not getting along or, that sort of thing. And I think that there are shows that have started to approach that, but I don't think, or have approached it, but I don't think that they make as much of an impression or an indent on our society as the ones where we go, oh, look, everything turned out this way. And then children go, oh, that's how it should be.
And that's the way it should be. Yeah. And it's not, it makes it seem, it is unrealistic to think that your problems are going to be solved that quickly, or that somebody else is going to come in and save the day kind of thing too. That's a big theme fairy tales. And no, you oftentimes have to solve this problem on your own or through your own actions. Not somebody's not just going to come in, sweep in your life and save the day,
That's very
and
true.
yeah. So
I also think if we read these books with kids where it does happen, where they sweep in and somebody saves the day, that it's a worthy conversation to have with young children to say, what if he never came?
Yeah.
What could she have done if he never showed up? What would her life be, right? What do you think she would have done if the prince never showed up, for example?
Yeah.
I think that's a great
That's actually a very
question.
valid conversation to have. What would happen?
What could she have done for herself?
For herself, would it have been okay if she didn't find and marry this prince? Would it have been okay? What would have happened?
Right. She would grow up, get a job, and be the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And if you don't know what I'm talking, if you don't know the Mary Tyler Moore Show, you can go find it on Hulu.
Oh, go find it.
It was
so good.
groundbreaking show in the 70s because the main character played by Mary Tyler Moore was not married. In the first season, I've rewatched this recently. In the first season, that is the quest for her and her friends, that they want to get married. And then as the show keeps going along, they sort of step away from that a little bit and talk about, and they show more how wonderful it is that she is an independent working adult. Mary Tyler Moore Show. You should go back and watch it, Alison.
I should go back and watch it. Yeah.
Hulu.
Yeah.
I also feel like we need to sit with children. So we need to have the conversation of what if this hero, whoever it is, doesn't have to be a prince. What if the hero of the book never came along? How could the other character solve the problem? I also think, or work on the problem. I also think that we should say to children, happily ever after looks different to different people.
Yes, because in fairy tales, the happily ever after is always like, hey, they got married. They fell in love and got married and had kids and whatever, and they lived happily ever after. And it's like, that's not everyone's reality. And that doesn't always make people happy either. Okay, so you can live a very happy single life also.
But you can also live a life where happily ever after means I get to travel a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe not during a pandemic, but in real times.
Real times.
Maybe happily ever after for one person is being able to do a lot of travel. Happily ever after for another person is spending a lot of me time doing things like meditation and yoga. Happily ever after could have nothing at all to do with relationship or not. There are things that people do in a relationship, people who are outside of a relationship, who it just makes them really, really happy. Happily ever after can look different to different people. And I think that we need to say to children, happily ever after is whatever gives you joy. What gives you joy? And we need to teach children that having a happy life means different things. It can mean being productive. It can mean giving things to other people. It can mean giving to society. It can mean being able to help others. It can mean paying it forward. Sometimes it can mean having a hobby that matters to you. Happily ever after doesn't have to be the traditional happily ever after. And if we introduce that notion to children in the early childhood years and start talking to them about what do you think would make you very, very happy as a grown-up, you will learn about what they've been exposed to, and you will learn what matters to them in this moment. The child who says, well, if I grow up to be, I don't know, some kind of superhero, that would be happily ever after. Where their head's at about reality and fantasy, right? That they're not separating reality and fantasy yet at this age. Those are the kids who say things like, I want to grow up to be Batman or Wonder Woman
or Superman.
Those are the kids who are not, and that tells you what stage of development that they're at. I think that the conversations we have around the television shows that they watch, around the movies that they see, and around the books that we read to them are very, very important. We can set children up to be happy. It just may not look like that.
Right.
And is happiness actually really a realistic goal is another question. What should the goal be?
That is another question.
Right?
Yeah. What should the goal be?
The Buddhists would tell you that happiness is not the goal, acceptance is.
Well, I think that's true because there is this notion like, oh, if you're happy, then therefore you are successful. But in reality, it is impossible to be happy all the time. That's just one of your many, many emotions. But there is this like notion of like, no, you should just be happy. And it's like, no, we're people that have many emotions. So like, I think acceptance would be maybe
just accept who you are, and right?
Accept who you are and what you have and what
you feel, and what you feel. Feel your emotions. Accept who you are. Accept the reality today, which can be different tomorrow. Live in the moment. Make today joyful. There's a difference between happiness and joy too.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many people out there that, because there's this huge market for this happiness thing, that are striving to get to that happy place. And then when you finally get there, then what happens? You know what I mean? It's like, so maybe, and is there, and it shouldn't be a destination. It should be a journey. You know what I mean? Like you should never, because once you land there, then what? You know what I mean? And it's not going to last because it's an emotion. It's not a place. Happiness isn't a place. It's a mood. It's an emotion.
Right. It
can't be there all the time.
It isn't a thing I can get in my car and drive to.
Right. Exactly. Right. But they have marketed to seem like, oh, if you just do this, you will be happy. You know what I mean? And that's not realistic as an adult. You know?
Happiness comes and goes, just like sadness and anger and all those other things. So if children are raised with the notion, kind of like you said, Alison, that life is a journey, and what you have to do are find the things to be grateful for along journey.
The way.
And there are times when I'm grateful for things that are not what people would consider joyful. I'm grateful for some of the hard experiences I have had, because they've taught me so much.
Right. So much. And like, those are the times that you're like, I'm never going to get through this. And then years later, you're like, oh, wow, I'm so glad I went through that. It made me discover more who I was, or it made me a stronger person, or it put me in this spot instead of that spot. And you're just like, oh, wow, now I'm happy that happens. You know, like I'm grateful for it. I accept that it happened and I have lived with it and I am grateful for it.
Well, what if we were to say to children, happily ever after is actually gratitude?
Yes. There you go. That would change the whole thing.
Wouldn't it?
Right?
Though?
Totally different mindset. Yeah.
Happily ever after is sitting at the end of every day and having a gratitude practice and thinking about, along this journey of life, what are you happy has happened? What are you grateful for? What taught you the most lessons?
You could do that every single day at school or with your family. Be like, hey, let's list all the really good, grateful things that happened today. And there you go. You ended the day on a happy, grateful note. And that's a good way to leave school or go, end the day at your family, like, why not do that?
Right. It doesn't have to only be around Thanksgiving kind of holidays. It could be
all the time.
Gratitude practice that we teach children from the time they're very, very young.
Yeah.
And we teach them that's the goal.
It also teaches you, and I only know this because I've been like recording my gratitude stuff, like all the things I'm grateful for, is sometimes it's not these big things. Sometimes it's the little things. Like yesterday I wrote, like, I am really grateful for this hot tea because I love hot tea. Okay. And I was just so grateful to come home and be like, I could just sit here and drink my tea. And I'm just so grateful for this moment. So it's like a little mug of hot tea. I was like, so then it makes you appreciate not just the big things that you have in your life, like those, because you should be grateful for the big things and the people and all that, but these little itty bitty moments that you can grab too, and that kind of, you're like, now I found joy in just sitting for 5 minutes and drinking hot tea, or, once you start paying attention to all these grateful things and start recording your gratitude or whatever, then you notice these little things that you might not have even paid attention to before.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
All right. So now that we've given everybody this perspective, maybe we'll dip more of the toe into these sorts of things that we use with children in the future, but maybe not. I don't know. We have to see how daring we're feeling.
Yeah. Who knows?
In the meantime, if you have not already joined our online community, please do so. Go to our website, howpreschoolteachersdoit.com, and all you have to do is log in. It's totally free, and you get content that's available only to people who have decided to log into the community.
Yeah. The community. Yeah, I like that we're using that word.
I do too.
I
really do too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. We will catch you next time on the podcast, folks.
Right.
And if you have any food for thought for us around this, please feel free to share it on our contact form on that website, or by contacting us on Facebook through our page. You can message us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Catch you next time, peeps.
Grateful for you, peeps.
We are grateful for you.